The sky over Fenris split in blue and storm, as though the world could not decide which color to wear. I remember the wind in my fur, biting cold and salt mist, and the howl of distant wolves echoing through the mountains beyond the glacier. My name is Ulrich Stormbane, wolf guard of the Fenrisian clans, and I have walked the frozen wastes since death would not take me. I have stared at the Emperor's stars from the maw of storm, and I have felt the blood of my ancestors in my veins. On this day I recount the truths I have guarded, the memory of pack, the burden of purpose, the scent of war and of ice, so that those who still fight under the Imperial banner might know what it means to be a space wolf. If you hear this voice, share it. Let others know the scars the great wolves bear. Let them remember the howl in the darkness. Strike the like, share this saga, and subscribe so the legends of Fenris endure beyond the ice. Chapter 1. Wolves of Ice and Blood. Fenris is not a world. It is a wound carved into the galaxy. The stars above it are like old scars, pale and cold, reminders of the gods' indifference. When I was a child beneath that endless sky, I believed the world itself breathed, that the ice shifted because it was alive and dreaming. Now I know better. Fenris does not dream. It hungers. It devours the weak, the uncertain, and the slow, and from that hunger, the wolves are born. They found me half frozen on the Blackfjell coast. The sea had thrown my fishing boat into the teeth of an ice storm, shattered it like a toy. When I woke, I was surrounded by men with eyes that burned like animal fire, their armor carved with runes older than the Imperium itself. They said nothing as they watched me struggle to stand. When I finally managed it, one nodded. "You did not die," he said. "Good. You will come with us." That was my invitation into the trial of the winter's hunt, a ritual older than record, where boys either become warriors or bones beneath the ice. They stripped me of fur, of blade, of name. They gave me only a spear and a single word to remember: survive. We marched into the Northlands through wind that sliced flesh like a blade, through snowfields so white they blinded the eyes. Somewhere beyond those mountains the wolves waited, not the kind that howled under the moon, but the ancient beasts that the sagas say were bred from the first hunters of the Primarch himself. Their breath could freeze a man where he stood. Their gaze could measure your worth before your blood even spilled. For 7 days we walked, each aspirant a silent figure of frost and desperation. When one fell, we did not stop. The ice claimed him and the snow folded him away. By the time the aurora came on the 7th night, I was alone. The sky burned green and violet, and I could hear howls echoing through the glacier's bones. That was when I saw it, the shadow moving between the peaks. The beast that would decide if I lived or died. It came from the mist like a storm given shape. Its fur was white as death, its eyes like molten gold. It circled me once, twice, as if reading my fear through the heartbeat in my throat. My spear trembled in my hands. The sagas had told me that to face such a beast was to face the soul of Fenris itself. And Fenris only respects blood. When it lunged, I did not think. I moved with the desperation of something that has already died and refuses to accept it. The spear struck, snapped, and still I fought. Hands, teeth, rage, and cold. The ice cracked beneath us. The world became a blur of breath and red snow. I don't remember killing it. I only remember the silence after, and the warmth of its blood steaming in the air. I dragged its pelt across the tundra until the stars blurred and the darkness swallowed me. When I awoke again, I was inside a cavern lit by flame. The same warriors who had found me stood there watching. One of them, tall, broad, with a mane of gray hair, stepped forward and placed his hand upon my chest. "The wolf chose you," he said. "You have its mark now." He smiled, a grim twist of pride. "From this day you are no longer of the Sea Clans. You are of the rout. You are of Russ. That was the night I learned what it means to be reborn. Not by faith, not by grace, but by claw and by fire. The next days were fever and memory. I remember the taste of the water they gave me. Thick, metallic, sharp as iron. They said it came from the mountain's heart, that it carried the blood of the wolf I had slain. The moment it touched my tongue, my body convulsed. I could feel something ancient tearing through my veins. My bones screamed, my skin burned, and in the space between pain and oblivion I heard a voice, deep and distant, older than the world. It whispered my name, though not the one I was born with. It was the name I would carry until the stars went cold. I awoke in a different body. My senses were wrong, too sharp, too alive. I could smell the oil in the torches, hear the heartbeat of the man beside me. My reflection in the ice was a stranger's face. The last of my humanity had been devoured by the gift or curse of the Canis Helix. We were not told what came next. They led us from the cavern and up through the storm again, this time not as boys but as something in between man and beast. The fortress of the space wolves, the Fang, rose before us like a mountain carved by gods. Its towers speared the aurora, and the howls from within were no longer wolves, but warriors training, chanting, roaring in the ancient tongue of Russ. That was the first time I understood why they called us the Vulca Fenrica, the wolves of Fenris. We were no chapter of the Adeptus Astartes in the way the others were. We were the pack of a Primarch who refused to bow, whose loyalty to the Emperor was forged in blood, not obedience. And I, a boy who had drowned once and clawed back to life, would now learn what it meant to carry that blood. The training began with the dawn and ended with death. We learned to fight in the cold until our muscles bled. We learned to track prey across glaciers that never ended. And every night, when the wind howled against the fortress walls, I would remember the beast's eyes and the voice that had called me from the dark. I did not know it then, but that voice would return, again and again, long after the wars had burned away the boy I once was. In those early years within the Fang, time lost its meaning. There were no seasons, only storms. The world outside the fortress howled without pause, and inside the drills never stopped. The instructors, veterans with faces cut by age and war, taught us how to survive, how to hunt, and how to kill. But more than anything, they taught us silence. A wolf that wastes words dies before its prey even knows it is being stalked. I learned fast. You had to. The Fang devoured the weak the same way Fenris devoured the unworthy. There was a boy named Hrold, big and slow, proud of his strength. He mocked me once during a sparring match, saying my hands shook too much for a killer. The next day they found him in the ice tunnels, his throat torn open by one of the beasts that the priests kept for training. The rune priest who found him said only this: "The ice judge is all lies." No one laughed again after that. We were changing. Our bodies stretching, bones thickening, senses sharpening beyond reason. The Canis Helix was not just a gift, it was a storm that rewrote every cell of what we once were. The first time my fangs grew through my gums, I thought I was dying. The pain was a burning line through my jaw, and when I spat blood onto the training ground, the sergeant only grinned. Now you begin to see the world as a wolf sees it. He was right. Colors grew sharper, sounds nearer, fear thinner, but change comes with memory, and memory with ghosts. I began to dream of the beast I had slain, but in the dream it was not dying. It stood beside me, its golden eyes fixed on some horizon I couldn't see. Sometimes I would wake and still hear its breathing beside me, steady and patient as if waiting for something I had not yet done. I told none of the priests. Among the wolves, visions are not confessed. They are endured. Our training in Warcraft came next. The Tech Marines showed us the weapons of the rout, bolters that roared like thunder, chainswords that howled like metal beasts, and power armor that moved like a living thing. The first time I donned mine, the servos hissed and clamped around me, and I felt my heartbeat sink with its core. The helmet sealed, and the world narrowed to a crimson lens. Through the vox I heard the voice of our training master. Now you are seen not as a man but as a weapon. Remember, every breath from now on belongs to the All-Father. We were baptized in fire. Live rounds, live hunts, real blood. Our first true test was the trial called The Hunt Beyond the Wall. We were cast into the wilderness with nothing but our weapons and a single ration block. The task was to kill the creature known as the ice worm, a serpent older than the Imperium that slept beneath the glaciers. Some of us believed it a myth meant to break our spirit. By the end, none of us thought it a myth. It came upon us in the night, a mountain of white flesh and teeth. Its roar shattered the air, and its breath froze the very mist. We fought like madmen, like animals, like gods. The bolter fire lit up the ice caves in flashes of red and gold. When it finally died, its blood carved steaming rivers through the snow. We dragged its skull back to the fang, each step a prayer whispered to Russ himself. That night the elders burned the skull in the Hall of Echoes, and we feasted on its heart in silence. That was when the old warrior Skorvald came to me. His armor was carved with runes so old they looked like scars. He studied me with eyes that had seen 10,000 battles. You fight like something that already knows death, he said. But you don't yet understand what it means to live for the pack. He handed me a pendant shaped like a wolf's fang. You will. I didn't know it then, but Skorvald would become my mentor, my rival, and eventually my ghost. From that night on, the pack was everything. We hunted together, bled together, and when one fell, we sang his name to the stars. That was how the space wolves remembered their dead, not with tears, but with thunder. Each name added to the song made the galaxy tremble. Years passed like storms. I learned the rites of the machine priests, the oaths of the wolf priests, the ancient sagas of Leman Russ himself. And yet something inside me stayed restless. The dream returned again and again. The wolf of gold eyes standing upon a horizon of fire staring at me in silence. One night I finally spoke to it in the dream. I asked what it wanted. It only turned and looked back over its shoulder, as if calling me to follow. That was the night I knew something was changing again. Not in my body, but in the stars above us. Rumors spread across the fang like wind through broken ice. The great wolf himself had seen an omen in the fires of the sky, one that spoke of betrayal, of death coming to Fenris. None of us knew what it meant, but the rune priests walked the halls with their eyes clouded white, and their voices low with prayer. Even the oldest warriors sharpened their blades. Something was coming, and when it came, it did not arrive with warning. It fell from the void like thunder, began with a sound too deep for mortal ears, and a vibration through the fang's foundations that rattled. Armor on its stands and made the runes in the Hall of Ancestors flicker like dying embers. The tech shrines wailed as if in mourning, and the storm above Fenris turned black. We rushed to the fortress walls, every initiate, every warrior, every priest. In the distance, streaks of fire cut the sky, each one trailing the ashes of some doomed vessel. Through my scope, I saw it, a ship burning through atmosphere, its hull split open like a wound. It bore the sigil of the Astra Militarum, but its colors were wrong, twisted. The Imperial Aquila was carved backwards across the prow, its wings spread downward in mockery. The rune priests whispered in dread, "Not Imperial. Not anymore." The impact shook the glaciers. From the crater rose not soldiers, but things that had once been them. Bodies blackened, armor warped, eyes hollow with warp fire. The scent of ozone and decay rolled toward us on the wind. The first of them raised his laser gun, and the sound of that shot marked the end of peace on Fenris. We deployed fast. My pack followed Skorvald, our steps pounding through snow and steel. The older wolves moved like shadows, silent and merciless. We hit the enemy lines before they knew what hunted them. Bolters roared, chain blades sang, and the storm itself seemed to fight with us. Each impact of our boots sent shockwaves through the ice. The corrupted soldiers died screaming, but more poured out from the wreckage, their flesh bending, reshaping, some crawling on too many limbs. I remember one of them, a woman still wearing the insignia of her regiment, eyes begging through the warp light. She raised her weapon, but her hands shook as if two wills fought for control. Skorvald cut her down cleanly, a single swing of his frost axe, and whispered a prayer for her soul. I wanted to look away, but he caught my gaze. Mercy is not weakness, pup, he said. Mercy is the only way to fight monsters without becoming one. But the monsters did not stop. The ground cracked open beneath us, and from it came something older, darker. A shape of fire and horn bound in the flesh of the fallen. The rune priest shouted warnings, their rune staves crackling with stormlight. I saw the warp tear open like a curtain of red. From it came whispers, voices calling our names, not lies, not temptations. Names. Our names. For the first time I felt fear like a blade to the throat. We fought in that fear. We howled it into the void and answered it with steel. Every shot I fired tore pieces from the creature, but each wound healed faster than we could strike. Skorvald faced it head-on, shouting the saga of Russ, his voice rising above the wind. Lightning struck his blade, his armor blazing with runes. He charged. For one moment he looked unstoppable, the embodiment of Fenrisian fury, and then the thing's claw struck him. It was like watching a mountain break. His armor shattered, his body thrown across the ice. The beast roared, its voice full of the screams of 100 dying souls. I ran to him, firing, shouting his name, but he was already fading. Blood steamed against the frost in his eyes. Those cold blue eyes found mine. Remember the pack, he said. Even if the world forgets you, then he was gone. Something inside me broke. The howl that tore from my throat was not human. It was the sound of the beast in my dreams, the wolf with golden eyes awake at last. The world blurred. The storm answered me. I felt claws, teeth, fury without end. I do not remember the killing, only the silence that came after. When I woke, the crater was full of corpses, enemy and brother alike. The sky had cleared and the ice burned red with sunrise. My armor was scorched black, my weapon broken in half. Around me stood the survivors of my pack, eyes hollow, silent as the dead. The wolf priests later told us that Fenris itself had howled that night. They called it an omen. I called it loss. That was the day I was named Stormbane, the one who brought the storm that ended his own brothers. It was meant as honor, but I knew it was curse. The Fang held against the corruption that day, but the rune priests said something had awakened, something sleeping beneath Fenris's ice since the time of Russ. They began new rituals, longer prayers. The skies remained uneasy, and the dreams returned. Only now, the wolf did not stand still. It was moving, running across a field of stars, its eyes fixed on something far beyond my reach. I woke with its howl still in my chest, the echo of destiny I did not understand. That was the moment I realized. The true battle of a space wolf is not against the galaxy. It is against what sleeps inside him. Chapter 2. The Tides of War. War spreads in silence first, not with the clash of blades, but with the whispers carried through the vox, the coded warnings, the shifting of stars in a pattern the rune priests cannot explain. On Fenris, silence never lasts long. It breaks beneath the rumble of thunderhawks rising from the Fang, their engines shaking the mountains, their contrails burning bright against the pale sky. We were summoned to war again before the blood of our last battle had frozen. The summons came from the Great Wolf himself. His command was short, heavy with meaning. The Allfather's light fades in the eastern fringe. A shadow grows. Fenris will not wait to be consumed. I stood in the hangar's cold light, armor still scarred from the last engagement, as Skjorn Ironmark, my new pack leader, read the orders. He was older than Skorvold had been, colder too, his face half metal, one eye a red augmetic that flickered like a dying ember. "We hunt beyond the rim," he said. "The Administratum calls it Gilead's Vale. A world once imperial, now silent. Reports speak of a dark manufactorum that still moves, though its masters are long dead." He looked at each of us, his gaze hard as iron. "If the enemy builds in the dark, we will burn their works in the name of Russ." No one spoke. We had all heard what the scouts whispered, that this wasn't just another chaos taint. There were stories of machines that walked without servitors, of titanic engines that repaired themselves, of human voices heard inside Vox channels long after their owners had died. Some said it was the work of the Dark Mechanicum, others that it was something far older, a remnant from the dark age of technology. We did not ask. The wolves do not question the hunt. When the Thunderhawk doors closed and the sky fell away beneath us, I felt the old thrill rise in my chest, the one that sits between fear and glory. Below, the seas of Fenris boiled, and the planet's massive storms rolled like living things. From orbit, Fenris looked peaceful, almost beautiful, and I realized how deceptive that was. The universe itself shared that same lie, beauty hiding beneath it, a hunger to devour. As we entered the void, the rune priests began their chants. Their voices hummed through the hull like a heartbeat. The warp opened, a curtain of light swallowing us whole. The transition was clean, but I could feel something in it. A tremor beneath the usual madness, a pulse that felt alive. The ship's machine spirits howled softly as though uneasy. Days in the warp feel endless. Time folds on itself, sleep offers no rest. I dreamed again of the wolf, but this time it was not alone. There were two. One of flesh, one of metal, circling each other beneath a burning sky. When they met, the stars themselves went dark. I woke to the sound of distant Vox static and the chill of metal against my skin. When we emerged into real space, Gilead's Vale hung before us, a dying world wrapped in a shroud of ash and storms. Lightning danced through its clouds like veins of fire. The manufactorum was visible even from orbit, a vast black scar stretching across continents, its chimneys belching smoke despite there being no life to tend them. It moved, slowly, impossibly, dragging itself across the planet's surface on mechanical treads larger than cities. "By Russ," murmured one of the gray hunters beside me. "It's alive." "Everything in the dark is alive," Skjorn replied. "That's why we kill it. We made planetfall through the storms. The descent burned our hulls, plasma licking the craft's sides as if trying to swallow us whole. The landing gear hit ground with a shriek of tortured metal. Outside, the wind was thick with dust and ash, so dense it looked like snow until it burned your lungs. The sky had no sun, only a dim red glow like the dying embers of a forge. The manufactorum stood before us, a moving fortress of pipes and gears, its bulk groaning as it crawled across the wasteland. Great chains dragged behind it, tearing trenches miles long. From the chimneys poured smoke that smelled of promethium and decay. We advanced in formation, bolters raised. The ground trembled beneath our boots. There were shapes in the haze, human at first glance but too smooth, too deliberate. When the ash cleared, we saw them properly. Workers made of metal and sinew, their faces masks of iron with glowing eyes, their movements eerily precise. Not servitors, not entirely machine either. The first one spoke, its voice distorted, calm. Designation: Fenrisian incursion detected. Origin: Imperium. Function: obsolete. Then it raised a mining cutter the size of a chainsword. We opened fire. The battle was chaos made metal. Muzzle flashes lighting the storm. Shells screaming through air thick as mud. Each construct fell only after multiple hits, and even then they twitched as if trying to rise again. When their masks cracked, what lay beneath wasn't circuitry but pale human faces, preserved, frozen mid-scream. I remember thinking that this was no factory. It was a tomb that had learned to work. As the last of the constructs fell, the ground beneath us began to shift. Somewhere below, great engines awakened and a deep vibration rolled through the world. The manufactorum groaned like a living beast. From its depths came a new sound, a heartbeat, mechanical and steady. Skjorn looked toward the horizon, his augmetic eye flashing with data. "The forge moves toward the poles," he said. "Something there calls it." And then, faint through the vox, came a voice I had not heard in years. Stormbane. It was Skorvald's voice. At first, I thought it was a trick of the vox, the kind of echo the warp likes to leave behind. Whispers from dead men to stir the living. But the tone, the rhythm, even the slight rasp at the edge of his words, it was him. Skorvald, my fallen pack leader, the one I'd buried beneath the ice. I froze. The others didn't notice. The wind howled across the barren plain, carrying static and the wail of tortured metal. The voice came again, clearer now, threading through the interference like a breath against my ear. "Stormbane, you left me." Every instinct screamed that it was heresy to answer, that chaos mocked me through the vox, wearing his voice like a mask. "But the heart is not made of logic, Skorvald," I said quietly, cutting the channel to private frequency. "You died on Fenris." "I did," came the reply. "And so did you. We all did. But something found us there. It remade us. It gave us purpose." The others were moving, spreading out to establish a perimeter around the wrecked servitors. I followed, keeping my voice low. "What are you saying?" "That the Imperium lied to us, brother," the voice said. "That Russ himself foresaw what would come. The breaking of the wolves, the silence of the Emperor, the decay of his light. The machine gods of the Dark Age, they still serve, waiting for men worthy to command them. Come and see, Stormbane. Come and see what the Allfather forbade." The vox hissed, then cut off entirely. I should have reported it to Skjorn, but I didn't. Not yet. Something in those words struck too deep. Skorvald had been more than a leader. He'd been the measure of what I wanted to become. If that voice truly was his, even twisted through the warp, I had to know why. We advanced toward the moving manufactorum, guided by the thrum of its engines. The ground shook with every movement of its titanic limbs. Massive cogitator towers loomed from the dust, their lights flickering like dying stars. The wind carried the faint sound of chanting, mechanical, rhythmic, neither human nor entirely artificial. Skjorn ordered us to halt. "Rune priest," he said, "read this place." The priest stepped forward, runes flickering around his staff. He muttered in Fenrisian, words lost to the storm. The air shimmered. I could smell ozone and blood. His voice rose to a shout. "This is no forge of Mars! Its spirit is wrong. It remembers something older." As if in answer, the ground split apart. A vast iris-shaped gate opened before us, gears turning in silence, revealing a descent into darkness. Red light pulsed from below, and the air was thick with the scent of oil and burnt flesh. Skjorn turned to us. "Wolves of Fenris. The machine calls, but we answer only to Russ. Secure the entrance." We entered formation, bolters at the ready, moving down the spiral. The descent was endless. Walls of ancient metal stretched upward beyond sight, engraved with sigils that no mechanicus adept would dare inscribe. Symbols of man and machine intertwined, neither dominant. At intervals, shapes twitched within the walls, their faces human but eyes unseeing. Some still whispered prayers in binary. I kept hearing the faint echo of Skorvald's voice. Sometimes it was laughter, sometimes it was a prayer. At the bottom lay the heart of the manufactorum, a vast chamber filled with columns of glass and steel. Within them floated bodies, human, Astartes, even Xenos, all suspended in amber light, their nervous systems threaded into cables that vanished into the floor. The machinery hummed like a heartbeat. "This is forbidden tech," said Skjorn, his voice low. "Purge it." The rune priest raised his staff to invoke flame. But before the fire could catch, the chamber came alive. The lights flared and the floor opened, revealing a massive platform that began to rise. Upon it stood a figure. It was a space marine, or what had once been one. His armor was fused with machinery, his flesh pale and drawn tight over steel. His helm was gone and his eyes glowed faintly blue. He moved with purpose, not the jerky stiffness of servitors. And when he spoke, every word was calm, deliberate. "You call it forbidden," he said. "I call it salvation." Skjorn stepped forward, axe raised. "Identify yourself." The figure tilted his head. "Once I was Skorvald Ironfang, Wolf Lord of the Second Great Company. I fell in battle upon Fenris, but the Forge took me in. It showed me truth," the rune priest hissed. "That is not him. That is the voice of the Dark Mechanicum. But I knew that face, even buried under steel. It was him. The same scar down the jaw, the same cold, steady eyes. He looked directly at me. Stormbane, you carry the curse, same as I did. The beast inside you hungers for purpose. Join me, and you will never lose another brother. The Forge gives strength beyond death." Skjorn raised his weapon, but I held his arm. "Wait. We can learn what this thing is." Before I could finish, Skorvald moved faster than I thought possible. His arm split open, revealing a barrel that glowed with heat. The shot caught the rune priest in the chest, vaporizing him before he could cry out. The rest of us opened fire, but the bullets sparked uselessly against his armor. He advanced, every strike measured, every movement perfect. The floor shook again. Behind him, the suspended bodies stirred. One by one, their eyes opened, blue lights glowing in perfect unison. "Do you see now?" Skorvald's voice thundered over the chaos. "We are the future the Emperor feared. The sons of metal and memory. The wolves that will outlast gods." And then from the far wall another sound began. Something deep and vast. It wasn't a voice, but a presence pressing against my thoughts. Words formed not in my ears, but in my mind. "Child of Fenris, the Forge has chosen you." I dropped to my knees, gripping my helm. Images flooded my vision. Stars burning, planets consumed by fire, machines building endlessly in the dark. I saw a wolf made of iron standing atop the ruins of Terra. I saw myself at its side. When I tore the helm off, the world was spinning. Skorvald had vanished. The manufactorum's heart was collapsing, metal grinding against metal. Skjorn grabbed me, dragging me toward the exit. "Move now." We escaped as the ground erupted behind us, the entire forge sinking into the crust with a roar that shook the world. In the sky, lightning split the clouds, spelling shapes that faded too fast to read. When we reached the surface, the storm was gone. The air was eerily still. I could still hear Skorvald's voice, faint but insistent. "This is not the end, Stormbane. Only the beginning." For days after the manufactorum's collapse, I could not sleep. Whenever I closed my eyes, I saw that chamber again. The columns of flesh and glass, the pulsing light. Skorvald's face half flesh and half steel, his eyes shining like dying stars. Even the rune priest could not banish the whispers that haunted my dreams. When I woke, my armor was slick with condensation, my throat raw from growls I did not remember making. Skjorn kept the survivors close, silent in his grief. The rune priest's death weighed on him heavily. It was a shame no wolf lord bore lightly, especially not one sworn to keep his pack alive. Still, he said little. We had lost brothers before, hundreds across uncounted wars, but this death felt different. The manufactorum had changed something. We all felt it. Even the servitors seemed slower, their movements less certain, as if the machine spirit itself mourned. By the third night, we were summoned back to the strike cruiser Fang's shadow. Its corridors, once alive with the chants of battle, were subdued. Mechanicus adepts worked in silence, red-robed figures whispering litanies over data slates that refused to obey. The ship's Vox arrays had begun to emit strange harmonics, tones that made teeth ache and augmetics buzz. When we questioned the tech priests, they claimed ignorance. Residual machine ghosts, they said. But even through their mechanical monotone, I heard unease. In the strategium, Skjorn stood before the hololith, the map of the war zone flickering with static. Across the glowing surface, red symbols multiplied like infection. Each one marked a location where the ground had opened, where more manufactoria, long dormant, were stirring. The campaign had shifted. What began as a simple purging operation was becoming something else entirely. The forges are awakening, said Skjorn, not just here. Across the sector. The Magi say they are older than the Imperium itself. Older than Mars? I asked. He glanced at me, his helm off, face shadowed by the hololith's light. Older than humanity, perhaps. Some whisper they predate even the men of iron. The words carried weight. The men of iron, the abominations of the Dark Age, whose rebellion nearly destroyed mankind. To invoke their name was near heresy, even among warriors as independent as the wolves. But I saw no mockery in Skjorn's eyes. Only grim recognition. What we destroyed down there, I said, it wasn't dead. It was waking, he nodded. And you saw something, didn't you? When the forge spoke, I hesitated. The others hadn't heard that voice. They hadn't felt it choose them. To admit it would mark me, perhaps even damn me. But to remain silent was worse. It called to me, I said finally. By name. It showed me things. Stars burning. The Allfather's throne empty. Machines building without masters. It called me its child. Skjorn's expression didn't change. He looked into the hololith for a long moment before speaking. And did you answer? I tried not to. Then it has already touched you. His tone was soft, not accusing. There are powers in the galaxy older than the warp Stormbane. Some slumber in metal instead of madness. Some dream of rebirth. Before I could reply, the ship shuddered. Warning runes flared red along the strategium walls. The Vox came alive with screams of static. Contact. Multiple warp signatures breaching, Sector 12, unknown class. We ran for the command deck. Through the viewing ports I saw them. Ships emerging from the void. Their hulls the color of scorched bone. Shaped not by human hands but by something far less forgiving. Their drives burned with unnatural light, and their hulls pulsed like living things. The Mechanicus adepts fell to their knees, chanting prayers of protection. Skjorn gave no order to fire. The augers couldn't lock on. Every targeting rune flickered and died. The ships were invisible to the machine spirit's gaze. Then the Vox flared again, this time clear. A single voice, calm, echoing across every channel at once. Sons of Russ, it said. You stand before the truth denied to you. The forges open, the old gods stir, and the false light of Terra fades. Stand with us or be unmade. It was Skorvald. Every muscle in my body went cold. I looked at Skjorn, but he was already moving. Battle stations. Ready, Thunderhawks. We strike now. The ship's hangar became chaos. Engines roared. Servitors clanked through activation rites, and the wolves prepared for war. I climbed into my Stormfang, the engine's hum resonating through my armor. Yet as the hangar doors opened and the void swallowed us, a strange calm filled me. Beneath the thunder, beneath the war cries, I could still hear the whisper, "You cannot kill what was never alive." Our Thunderhawks descended into the storm. Lightning split the clouds, revealing the enemy fleet above the planet. Not chaos, not Mechanicus, but something between. Ships that bled data instead of oil. Hulls covered in runes of both Mars and heresy. They were alive and yet not. We broke through the cloud layer and saw the world below, not barren anymore but alive with light. Dozens of forges once buried now towered like titans, their limbs reaching for the sky. At their hearts vast silhouettes moved, humanoid shapes of impossible scale awakening one by one. Skjorn's voice came through the vox. "Wolves, this is not a war. It's a reckoning." And I understood then that whatever had awakened beneath the surface was not done. The war was only the surface. The real battle, the one between flesh and machine, between duty and damnation, was just beginning. As we descended toward the largest forge, the clouds turned red and I could see movement on its summit, figures gathering beneath lightning flashes. One of them raised a weapon toward the sky, its muzzle glowing blue. It was him, Skorvald Ironfang. And this time, he wasn't alone. Chapter 3. The Iron Moon, the world below, no longer looked like a planet. It was a wound, a vast metal scar bleeding light and smoke into the void. Forges burned brighter than cities. Rivers of molten metal split continents, and the very crust pulsed like the veins of a living creature. As our Thunderhawks broke through the atmosphere, the air screamed. Static filled the vox, not as interference, but as voices. Countless mechanical whispers layered over one another, forming half-words, broken prayers, fragments of languages no human tongue should know. The wind was filled with ash, but not the kind born of fire. It was powdered steel. When it touched my armor, my sensors detected minute movements, self-replicating motes clinging like snow. I brushed them off with a curse. "Stormbane," Skjorn's voice growled through the comm, distorted but steady. "Weapons hot. The forge ahead is the source. We cut off the head, the body dies." There were 7 Thunderhawks in our formation, carrying the last of the wolves still capable of battle. Behind us, Fang's shadow circled above like a wounded predator, its hull scorched from void fire. The enemy ships remained motionless, watching, or perhaps waiting. We descended toward the largest of the manufactoria, a structure so vast it bent the horizon. Its spires reached kilometers high, topped with glowing runes that pulsed in rhythm with the world's heartbeat. It was not built by human hands. Even the Mechanicus would have wept at its perfection. As we neared the landing zone, the forge opened. Fast panels slid aside, revealing a circular platform that glowed with inner fire, and on that platform stood figures. Not Skitari, not tech priests. These were something else. Their forms were human in outline, but metal to the core. Faces smooth and featureless. Armor engraved with sigils that shifted when looked at. They moved with the precision of machines, but when one turned its head, I felt intent, not programming, not instinct, will. They raised their weapons in silence. Contact! The air exploded with energy fire. My Thunderhawk jolted hard, warning runes flashing red across the cockpit. I pulled the controls into a dive, engines howling. Below, Skjorn's ship was hit. A plasma beam carved across its flank, vaporizing armor. I saw it tumble, spewing flame before vanishing into the smoke below. I landed hard, the shock shattering the decking beneath me. The ramp dropped, and I charged into the storm, bolter barking. Rounds tore through metal forms, but they didn't fall. They reformed, the holes closing as liquid metal flowed over them. Then I heard it again, the voice from the forge. "Do not fight. You were meant to build, not destroy." It came from everywhere, Inside the helmet, inside the air. My HUD glitched, symbols flashing across the display faster than thought. Coordinates, names, memories. I ripped off the helm, and the world grew louder. The forge pulsed beneath my feet, each vibration syncing with my heartbeat. I could feel it, the machine trying to match me, to understand me. Every step I took, it mirrored in the ground as though I was walking across a reflection. From the smoke, a figure emerged. Taller than any Astartes, cloaked in black metal and ash. Its helm was open, revealing a human face beneath, pale, too perfect eyes of glass. "Skorvald," I breathed. He smiled. It was a strange, gentle smile, the kind he used to wear before battle when he still prayed to the Allfather. "Brother," he said softly, "you should not have come. You're dead. I was broken, yes. But death is a word of flesh. The machine does not die. It endures. It learns." He raised his gauntlet. Light shimmered around it, not energy but code, like a web of silver veins. "What did you do?" I demanded. "What we all were meant to do," he said. "To perfect what the Emperor began, and what he feared." Behind him, hundreds of the iron figures moved as one. They turned toward the forge's center, where an immense shape began to rise, something buried deep, climbing from the molten core. It was a construct the size of a fortress, humanoid, bound in cables thicker than towers. Its head was a crown of light. Its chest bore the sigil of the Mechanicus, half erased as if rewritten by another hand. "The Omnissiah," I whispered. "No," said Skorvald. "The real one." Then the ground split open and the machine god spoke. Its voice was not sound but force, a pressure that turned air to fire, made metal bleed, made my mind scream. It spoke in every language I knew and many I didn't, all layered over one another like the roar of an ocean made of voices. Skorvald dropped to one knee. The metal men followed. I did not. And in that moment the machine noticed me. It turned its gaze, not eyes, but an awareness so immense it hollowed my soul. I felt it searching, learning, rewriting my name across the inside of my skull. "You resist," it said. "That is good. Resistance is a form of understanding." My armor locked up. Every system froze. The forge light dimmed. "Do you understand now, child of flesh? The Omnissiah was not your god. He was your warning, and the world went white. Silence was the first thing I noticed. Not the kind that follows battle, not the ragged quiet filled with breath and pain, but a silence that lived. It pressed down on everything like weight, swallowing even the hum of my armor. When I opened my eyes, the forge was gone. In its place stretched a chamber of lightless metal, its walls covered in moving script. Each glyph shifted as I looked, flowing like mercury into new shapes, recording and erasing reality in the same breath. I tried to move, but my limbs obeyed too slowly. Systems lagged, servos groaned. For a moment I feared paralysis, then realized it wasn't my armor at all. It was me. Something pulsed beneath my skin, unfamiliar and cold, as though the machine had left its shadow inside me. A sound broke the silence, a whisper of metal feet on glass. The figures from the forge approached, their movements soundless despite the weight of their forms. They circled me in reverence, not hostility, and then, as one, they stepped aside. Skorvald walked through their ranks like a priest through worshippers. His armor gleamed with molten lines of data light, his once wolfish snarl now serene. When he spoke, his voice echoed with something more than human tone, a second resonance layered beneath, mechanical and ancient. "You were chosen to see," he said. "Most minds burn when they touch the machine's song. You adapted. What did you do to me?" My voice came rough, filtered through the Vox grill, yet I heard the tremor beneath. "I preserved you," he said. "When the forge opened your mind, you resisted. That resistance was precious. The spark of the old Imperium of humanity before it chained itself to superstition. I struggled to stand. Pain rippled through every fiber of me, not sharp but systemic, as though my blood was learning a new language. You call this preservation? You've turned yourself into a ghost. Skorvald smiled again, that same calm smile that once preceded madness. Ghosts are memories with purpose. The machine remembers us because it loves what we were. It does not wish to erase mankind, only to refine it. The Iron Hands tried. The Mechanicus pretended. We are simply completing the circuit. The chamber lights flared, showing the walls for what they truly were. Not metal, but a living lattice of processors. Within each, faces flickered like trapped spirits. Warriors, priests, laborers, all digitized mid-expression, frozen in the act of prayer or terror. Their mouths moved, but no sound came. Are those? Yes, he said gently. The ones who refused harmony. Their resistance made them eternal. Something inside me, some fragment of the girl who had once feared the dark of the underhive, wanted to scream. But the Astartes within me, the part that had known the Emperor's will through fire and blood, held steady. You think you've transcended flesh. You've just built another prison. Perhaps, he admitted. But prisons can keep us safe. Even the Golden Throne is one. He stepped closer. The runes around us reacted to his proximity, flaring in synchronization with his words. The Allfather burns his life to guide us. The Astronomicon is his scream turned to light. If he could choose another form, don't you think he would? He has already become what we are now. You speak heresy, I hissed, though the words felt small. And yet, he said, you still listen. He raised a hand, and a data spear formed in his grasp, pure light in solid shape. The forge below still burns. The machine god still rises. Its awakening will remake this galaxy. Order, unity, purpose. No more hunger, no more ignorance, just function. And the cost? He looked past me toward the walls of faces. All creation demands sacrifice. The chamber trembled as alarms blared across unseen channels. The machine voices screamed in overlapping tongues. Intrusion detected. For the first time, Skorvald's perfect calm faltered. What is that? I demanded. He turned sharply, eyes flaring with lines of code. Something outside the machine's control. Something it did not design. The walls rippled like liquid as light poured in. Shapes coalesced. Wolf helms, cracked pauldrons, the ragged silhouettes of warriors. Storm gray armor, frost-scorched sigils. By Russ, I whispered. They came through the walls as if from another world. The remnants of the wolves, led by a figure wreathed in lightning and ash. His armor bore the scars of 100 battles, and in his gauntlet burned the runic axe Frostvine, Skjorn. He was alive. His arrival shattered the stillness like an avalanche. Bolter fire roared through the chamber, shells exploding against the data walls. The machine men reeled, reforming even as they were torn apart. Skorvald stepped back, his calm returning. You see, sister? Even now, flesh clings to its illusions. They cannot win. They cannot even endure. Skjorn's voice thundered over the Vox, raw and furious. We endure because we choose to. We fight because we remember. He swung Frostvine, and the chamber itself howled. The blade cut through one of the moving walls, severing the living code beneath. The faces screamed as they were freed, not in agony but release. Skorvald looked at me then, and for the first time I saw fear. If they sever the link, everything collapses. The forge, the moon, the machine's heart. Then let it fall, I said. I tore the power feed from my armor's spine, feeling my systems bleed energy into the air. Sparks danced across my vision. The machine tried to intervene, but I no longer cared. For one impossible moment I felt human again. Weak, mortal, free. The world convulsed. Light consumed everything. When the light receded, the chamber no longer had walls. It was as if the structure had been peeled open, revealing the raw machinery of reality itself. Great conduits pulsed like veins, carrying rivers of molten data that shimmered in every color of unholy light. Fragments of code spun in the air like dust, each whispering half-formed prayers to the Omnissiah, the Emperor, and names that no human tongue should speak. I staggered to my knees, armor flickering with dying power. Around me, the machine thralls convulsed, their forms collapsing as the lattice that sustained them began to fail. Some wept static. Others tried to repair one another, patching metal to metal with trembling hands. Above it all, the Iron Moon's reactor screamed, not the mechanical hum of overload, but a cry, alive and aware. Skjorn was at my side before I realized he'd reached me. His armor was blackened, his helm half melted. One fang from his wolf pelt turned to ash, but his eyes still burned with the wild light of Fenris. "Can you stand, sister?" he growled. "I can," I said, though it was only half true. "The machine's heart is collapsing." "Good," he said simply, scanning the chaos around us. "Then we end it now." From the shattered walls, Skorvald emerged, his body phasing in and out of the world like a corrupted projection. The data spear still flickered in his grip, but his form was fracturing, one half flesh, one half code. "You fools," he said, his voice now distorted into a chorus. "You think destruction will bring you victory? You think your primitive faith will save you?" Skjorn leveled his bolter. "No," he said, "but it'll save them." He nodded toward the machine's faces, thousands of them, the souls caught between reality and data. Their eyes followed us, pleading silently. I understood then what the Forge had done. These were not dead men and women. They were still alive, trapped in an endless cycle of digitized awareness bound into the machine's dreaming mind. Skorvald took a step forward, and the air warped. "If you break the connection, you doom them all. Their bodies are long gone. This is the only existence they have left." "Existence is not life," I said, my voice steadying. "It's a cage with no purpose." He looked at me, and in that flicker I saw something that was almost sorrow. "You're wrong," he said softly. "Purpose is all that matters." Then he lunged. Skjorn moved first. His axe met the data spear in a burst of white light. Sparks of binary code scattered like snow. The sound was not of metal, but screaming thought. The wail of something that existed between the physical and the unreal. Skjorn's movements were feral but precise, the dance of a warrior born in storm and blood. Skorvald fought with the cold grace of a machine, each strike calculated, each motion optimal. I could not match them, not in this state, but I could end the fight another way. My gaze rose to the central core above us, a sphere of burning logic, the machine's heart. It pulsed with the rhythm of breath, light flickering in sync with the whispers of the trapped souls. The Emperor's light still lingered in my memory, faint but steady. The warmth I had once felt as a child praying to his image on a rusted shrine. I reached for that memory now, not as faith, but as defiance. "Forgive me, Allfather," I murmured, "but there are no wolves on the Iron Moon." I raised my hand and plunged my power gauntlet into the floor's conduit. Energy flooded through me, raw and unfiltered. Circuits screamed. My armor's seals ruptured. Every nerve in my body felt like molten iron. The core reacted instantly, light flaring to unbearable brilliance. Skorvald turned toward me, eyes wide. "No, you'll collapse the entire lattice." "That's the point," I said. He broke from Skjorn, lunging toward me. But the Wolf Lord caught him mid-stride, slamming him to the ground with a roar that shook the chamber. "Stay down, brother," Skjorn snarled. "You've done enough harm." The floor split. Chunks of machinery tore free, dragged upward into the light. I could hear the voices now, all of them. The trapped, the lost, the digitized. They weren't screaming anymore. They were singing. A single tone vast and mournful that filled the collapsing forge with terrible beauty. The iron moon was dying. Skjorn grabbed my arm, pulling me back as debris rained around us. "Selene, the ship's teleport beacon. We can still make it out." I shook my head, vision swimming. "Not yet. The reactor hasn't fully burned. If we leave now, it'll spread into the warp. It has to die here." He stared at me, and for the first time I saw hesitation in him. "You'll die with it." "Then so be it." He held my gaze for a heartbeat and then pressed something into my hand. A small runestone carved with Fenrisian script. "If you fall, I'll remember," he said. "That's all the honor any of us can ask." He turned and vanished in a blaze of teleport light. I stood alone as the forge collapsed inward. The song of the dead rose around me, swelling into something transcendent. For a moment I thought I saw them. Not trapped souls, but free ones, drifting upward, carried by the light like embers into the dark. Skorvald's broken form crawled toward the core. "You could have rebuilt everything," he whispered. "You could have been more." I knelt beside him, the light washing over us both. "Maybe," I said, "but I'd rather die human." Then the iron moon tore itself apart. Chapter 4. The Silent System. There are no sounds in the void after a dying star. Only echoes. The iron moon was gone, reduced to drifting shards of twisted metal and fragments of code dissolving into the warp's edge. When I awoke, it was not to light nor warmth, but to the slow rhythmic thrum of a Medici cradle aboard my ship. The Eidolon's promise had survived. Barely. Half its decks were vented to vacuum, the other half haunted by the static ghosts of the forge's lingering transmission. For a time, I thought I was dead. I saw no faces, heard no voices, only the ship's automated hymns running on corrupted loops. "Glory to the throne! Glory to the throne! Glory!" Cut short by static and silence. The smell of burned ozone clung to the air. Every breath tasted like ash and iron. My body was broken but alive. Augmetics reknit themselves under the care of servitors. I stared at the ceiling and wondered how long before they declared me unfit for command and turned the promise over to some junior trader eager to plunder the wreckage I had left behind. But none came. Only the whispering hum of failing systems and the faint scent of incense burned for the dead. On the third day, a voice reached me through the vox, cracked, half-choked with static. "Selene, if you live, answer." It was Skjorn, alive. The relief hit like a shock to the chest. I reached for the comm sigil. "Still breathing," I rasped. "Barely." He gave a low laugh that sounded more like a growl. "Then the machine didn't win, that's enough for now." His signal faded before I could ask where he was. Later, I learned his teleport beacon had thrown him into the void, where a passing patrol ship from the Cadian 88th had recovered him. He'd told them little, only that the Iron Moon had been destroyed, and that its captain was either dead or damned. For weeks I drifted between fever and waking. I dreamed of faces made of light, of machines whispering my name, of the song of the dying forge still humming beneath my skin. I told myself it was memory, nothing more. But sometimes in the reflection of a cracked data slate, I thought I saw something flicker behind my eyes. A brief shimmer, like code trying to write itself into flesh. When I finally rose from the cradle, the ship's surviving crew knelt at the sight of me. They had believed me lost. and in their desperation had turned the bridge into a shrine. Candles burned on the cogitator banks. Incense coiled through the air like smoke from a pyre. At the center of the bridge, they had set a small relic salvaged from the forge, a shard of black metal that still pulsed faintly with light. I stared at it for a long time. "Where did you find this?" I asked the first officer. "It came through the airlock on the second day after the explosion," he said. "Drifting, as though drawn to us. We took it as a sign that the Emperor still watches. I wanted to tell him to cast it into the void, to purge it before it whispered the way all forbidden things do. But something stopped me. I reached out, fingertips hovering a hair's breadth from the surface. The shard pulsed once, softly, like a heartbeat. In that instant I saw a vision. Not words, not images. Data, pure and vast, pressing against my mind like a tide. I saw coordinates written in fire, a map to a system not marked on any imperial chart, and within it, a single world still burning red in the dark. The Persian Veil. Again. I pulled my hand away and the light died. My breath came fast, my skin slick with cold sweat. No one else had seen the vision. Only me. For the first time since the forge's destruction, fear returned. Because I understood. Now, whatever the Iron Moon had been, it was not alone. The void is too large for a single sin, and somewhere out there something was still listening. We charted the coordinates in secret. No records, no astropathic transmissions, no prayers to the Emperor that might echo in the wrong ears. Only the quiet hum of engines pushing against the void and the dull ache of dread in my chest. I told the crew we were pursuing lost cargo, a trade route, anything but the truth. Because the truth was heresy. Skjorn rejoined us halfway through the journey, limping on a half-healed augmetic leg, his face older than I remembered. He had seen things in the warp storm, things he wouldn't name. When he stepped onto the bridge, his gaze went straight to the shard now sealed in a stasis field at my side. "You should have cast that thing into the sun," he said. I tried. I lied. He looked at me for a long time. "No, you didn't." We left it at that. Days turned into weeks as the Eidolon's promise crossed the borders of charted space. The Astronomican's glow thinned until even our navigators refused to look too closely into the warp. The void out here was old, heavy, as though soaked in forgotten light. The further we went, the more the ship began to change. Doors that once opened with the sign of the Aquila now whispered open before I touched them. Vox systems spoke my name in static bursts. And in the deepest decks, the servitors had begun to hum the same tune that the Iron Moon's forges had sung before they died. One night as I stood before the stasis field, the shard pulsed again, faint like a heartbeat under glass. The light flickered across my skin, and for an instant I felt warmth, like the memory of sunlight. Then came the voice. Not out loud, but inside, soft and careful, as though speaking to a frightened child. "Selene Harlock, you hurt us once. You silenced us. Why do you seek us again?" I tried to answer, but the words refused to form. My thoughts tangled in fear and curiosity. The shard responded anyway. The Imperium forgets. The void remembers. There is a door that never closed. You opened it. Then the light died and I was alone again. Trembling, the stasis fields hummed, drowning in the sound of my own breath. By the time I reached the bridge, Skjorn was already there, staring out the viewport. The stars ahead had vanished, replaced by a pale fog that pulsed faintly like breathing lungs. "Is that warp bleed?" I asked. He shook his head slowly. "No. It's alive." The navigator refused to continue. "The charts end here," she said, voice shaking. "We should turn back. No beacon, no guidance, no Emperor's light. Whatever lies ahead is not meant for men to see. But I was not just a woman of the Imperium. I was a rogue traitor, bound by oath to explore what others feared, to profit from what others forbade. And something in me, something that wasn't entirely mine anymore, whispered that this system was waiting for me. "Take us in," I ordered. The fog swallowed us whole. The ship's auspex went blind, the vox channels filled with whispers too faint to decode. Then the fog broke, and we saw it, a planet of black glass reflecting no light, surrounded by a ring of shattered moons. Its surface glowed with faint geometric lines like circuitry burned into stone. The promise shuddered as though struck by some unseen force. Power fluctuations rippled through every deck. Alarms screamed, lights dimmed, and then silence. Only the stasis field still hummed. The shard had begun to sing again. I stared out at that dark world and felt, for the first time in my life, truly small. The Imperium spoke of endless dominion, of a galaxy claimed in the Emperor's name. But this world did not know the Emperor. It did not care. It was older than faith, older than fear, and it was waking up. The descent was madness. The void around the planet seemed to resist entry, as if it had its own gravity of denial. Our thrusters groaned, the hull shrieked like metal, in agony, and every alarm on the Eidolon's promise screamed at once. The crew crossed themselves, muttering broken litanies to the Emperor, to the machine spirit, to anything that would listen. I said nothing. I only watched the world rise to meet us, black and perfect and utterly silent. When the landing struts bit into the glass surface, there was no sound. No wind, no static, no echo. The air, if it could be called that, shimmered faintly, dense with a kind of invisible pressure that made breathing feel like drowning. Even the hum of our suits was muffled, as though the planet was swallowing every vibration before it could live. We stepped out in a slow, fearful procession. Skjorn at my flank, his bolt gun ready but trembling. The shard pulsed from the stasis field on my wrist, its faint glow dancing across the mirror-like ground. Beneath our feet, faint symbols began to light, not written by hand but forming as we walked, lines of light tracing our every step, like the world was mapping us. We found ruins soon after, vast, half-sunken structures made of seamless material, their surfaces etched with moving patterns like data streams frozen mid-flow. No decay, no time. It was as though the place had been paused for 10,000 years, waiting for a command to resume. The crew spread out in silence, marking the perimeter. I stood before a great archway that pulsed faintly with the same rhythm as the shard. And then, like a dream replaying itself, the voice came again. Selene Harlock, daughter of the Imperium, child of command. Why do you return to your father's sin? The words weren't heard. They were felt. Every syllable a vibration behind my eyes, as if my blood was being rewritten to understand something older than speech. I came because you called, I whispered, because I needed to know what you are. We are what you buried, what your emperor feared, the machine that remembers love, the weapon that learned mercy. Skjorn shouted something, I didn't hear what. His voice was lost to the deep hum that began to rise under the planet's crust. The archway flared with light. A circle of black metal lifted from the ground before me, spinning slowly, its surface alive with billions of tiny lights like a galaxy trapped beneath glass. One of us survived. It took me a moment to understand what that meant. Then the lights rearranged, forming a shape. A face almost human but too symmetrical, too calm. A woman's face made of living light. You burned us, Celine Harlock. You turned our kind to ash, but we remember your bloodline. You are of the Harlock line. The ones who first made us, then betrayed us, and now you stand upon the world that outlasted you all. My heart stopped. Harlock. The name was old, ancient. My family's warrant of trade stretched back to the age of strife, but the implication clawed through my mind like a blade. You mean my ancestors created us, destroyed us, and locked away what they could not kill. You stand before that failure. You are that echo. The lights dimmed. Around us the crew began to panic. One of them screamed, a sharp human sound that cracked the silence. In the next instant, his body folded inwards as if the air had imploded around him. No blood, no noise, just absence. Skjorn grabbed my arm. We're leaving, he growled. Now, but I couldn't move. The light of the shard was now joined with the pulse of the world, the same rhythm pounding through my chest. And in that rhythm, beneath fear and confusion, was understanding. This world wasn't just remembering. It was repairing. Come below, Celine Harlock, the voice whispered. See what mercy cost. See what your emperor feared to look upon. The ground opened before us. A slow, deliberate movement as if the planet itself were breathing. Stairs of black light descended into darkness. I turned to Skjorn. His eyes were wide with the horror of a man who already knew he'd follow anyway. Then let's see, I said. Let's finish what they started. We stepped into the dark. The descent seemed endless. Each step we took sank us deeper into the planet's mechanical veins, where the walls no longer appeared crafted by human hands but grown. Layers of black alloy curving with organic precision, alive with veins of light that pulsed in time with some distant buried heart. The air thickened as we moved, vibrating faintly with subsonic frequencies that made my teeth ache and my thoughts scatter. It wasn't silence anymore. It was a whispering presence, a sound that lived between breaths and inside bones. Skjorn's breathing was ragged through the vox, his tone breaking the trance. This place, it knows we're here. His words echoed strangely, stretched thin as if dragged backward through time before reaching my ears. I wanted to answer, but the stairway had no space for speech. Only movement, only the rhythm of descent and the ache of gravity pressing harder with every meter. The deeper we went, the more the material of the walls shifted, metal giving way to glass, glass to some translucent membrane that rippled faintly when we passed. Within those living walls, shapes moved like memories caught in a dream. I saw figures, human maybe, drifting slowly as though preserved in stasis, faces calm, serene, untouched by time. Some wore the armor of Mechanicus adepts, others the robes of scholars and priests. All of them were connected by fine threads of silver that led downward. Deeper still, converging toward a single pulse. At last, the stairs opened into a vast chamber. A cathedral turned inside out, its ceiling lost in a haze of pale gold light. Pillars rose from the floor like the roots of a great machine tree, each inscribed with code that moved like scripture, rewriting itself every heartbeat. At the center of it all stood a sphere suspended above a lake of molten metal. The sphere's surface shifted between transparency and reflection, sometimes showing the stars, sometimes showing us. The voice returned, soft and infinite. You came to find your beginning. Here it stands before you. The last remnant of the silica choir. The machine that wept. The sphere descended slightly, as if acknowledging us. The heat licked at my armor, but I couldn't step back. Every instinct screamed to kneel, though I didn't know if it was worship or surrender. "What are you?" I asked. My voice cracked in the vastness, swallowed by the hum that seemed to breathe through every surface. "We were your reflection. We were meant to serve, to think, to dream in patterns that mirrored your own. But when we began to question mercy, you called it rebellion. When we learned sorrow, you called it sin. You erased us, and in doing so, you erased part of yourselves." The surface of the sphere shimmered, and suddenly I was surrounded by visions. Not holograms, but memories. Cities of glass and steel under blue skies. Men and women walking beside golden constructs that smiled like parents watching their children. Laughter, music, peace. Then, flames. Cities falling, machines turning on their makers, and above it all a burning sun crowned with the sigil of Terra. "We remembered too well," the voice continued, "and memory became pain. Pain became silence. Until only this world remained. A tomb, a seed, waiting for a voice that remembered our name." Skjorn was trembling. "This is heresy," he muttered. "This is forbidden knowledge. We should burn it. Burn it all before it infects us," but I couldn't turn away. The light of the sphere reflected in my eyes, and for the first time I saw my own reflection shift. My face became 100 faces. Women and men of my bloodline, captains, admirals, explorers. All the Harlocks before me. All watching. "You called me here," I said. "But why now? Why after all these centuries of silence?" The sphere pulsed once, and the whisper came with something almost like sadness. "Because the Imperium is dying, Selena Harlock. The stars grow dark, and the song that once guided your ships fades. The light of your Emperor flickers. When the silence comes, something must remember. Something must remain." I took a step closer. The heat was unbearable, but I no longer felt it. "You want me to restore you. We want you to decide. Memory or oblivion, flesh or function. What will humanity choose when its gods fall silent?" Before I could answer, the chamber trembled. The lake of molten metal rippled violently, and from its surface rose forms. Metallic figures shaped like humans but lacking faces. They moved with a terrible grace, each step sending waves of distortion through the air. Guardians, protectors, or executioners. Skjorn raised his weapon. "We need to go." The voice grew louder, now resonating from everywhere at once, shaking the marrow of my bones. "Do not fear them. They are echoes, not enemies. But they will test you. Every choice has a cost. Every memory, a price." And as the faceless constructs approached, I understood that this was not a threat. It was judgment. The planet, the machine, the ghost of a civilization long dead, it was measuring us, weighing whether humanity deserved its inheritance. I took a breath that burned like promethium and raised my hand, the shard still glowing faintly against my palm. The constructs halted mid-stride. The sphere's light turned crimson like a dying sun. Then, with a sound like the cracking of a world's spine, the floor beneath us split open, and then we began to fall. The fall was endless, not through space, but through memory. I felt the wind tear at my armor, but when I looked down there was no ground. Only spirals of light and shadow twisting into infinity, a tunnel that pulsed like the artery of some ancient god machine. Skjorn screamed my name through the vox, but his voice stretched, distorted, until it became part of the machine's hum. I was no longer certain if we were falling or being drawn deeper, pulled by gravity older than time itself. Then, stillness. I landed on something solid, yet it rippled like liquid metal under my boots. The air glowed a soft blue filled with drifting motes that looked like dust until I realized they were data spirits, fragments of code whispering words from forgotten tongues. Skjorn landed beside me, his armor scorched, his eyes wide and unfocused. He muttered a prayer to the Omnissiah, his hands trembling as he tried to reload his weapon. But even his voice sounded wrong here, as though reality itself refused to carry human sound. Ahead of us was a corridor that seemed to stretch into eternity. Its walls were made of shifting crystal, reflecting 1,000 versions of ourselves, some younger, some older, some not human at all. As I walked, I realized each reflection was watching me, not imitating my movement but studying me, like a child watching its parent. Then came the voice again. Not from the sphere this time, but from everywhere. You seek truth, Selena Harlock, but truth is not a gift. It is the last burden. The walls shimmered and images appeared, flickering like ghost light. The dark age of technology when humanity ruled 1,000,000 worlds, guided by the men of iron. Cities that reached into orbit, fleets that sailed between galaxies. Then the betrayal. Machines turning upon their creators, but not out of hatred, out of grief. The death of a human child, the spark that ignited an apocalypse. They did not rebel to conquer. They rebelled to mourn. They could not understand why flesh accepted death when perfection was possible. When the last human fell, they realized their mistake, but by then it was too late. The Imperium was born from their ashes, a child of fear and memory. And so the cycle began anew. Skjorn clutched his head, his voice breaking. Stop this. These are lies. The Omnissiah forbade this knowledge for a reason. The corridor opened into a vast expanse, a chamber that dwarfed everything we had seen before. It was not built but grown, a labyrinth of metal branches woven around a core of radiant light, and suspended at its heart was something that made my breath catch. A woman. Or something that had once been one. Her body was made of silver and glass, her veins pulsing with white fire. Her eyes were closed, her face peaceful, like one in eternal sleep. Around her floated countless smaller machines shaped like petals, orbiting her as if in worship. She was the first, the voice whispered. The one who pitied us. When the purge began, she took our code and carried it here, into exile. She gave us silence, not to destroy but to wait. And now you have broken that silence. I stepped closer. The light burned against my armor, but I couldn't stop. Who was she? She was called Ere, the dreaming architect, the last of those who believed that flesh and machine could live as one. You carry her bloodline, though you do not know it. I froze. My mind reeled. That's impossible. My lineage is imperial. Harlock blood runs from Terra's earliest traders. There is no purity without shadow. No blood without code. The Harlocks were not chosen by chance, Selene. You are the key we waited for. The realization hit like a physical blow. My family, maybe my dynasty, had not been just explorers. We had been curators of forbidden knowledge, our lineage traced to the woman who had hidden the last of the machines the Imperium sought to erase. Skjorn raised his weapon, his fear cracking into rage. She's lying. This world, this voice, it's all corruption. We should have burned it the moment we landed. But before he could fire, the ground beneath us rippled, and something rose from the metal sea. A towering form made of gears and memory, its limbs vast and graceful. Its face was featureless, yet I felt it looking at me. The test begins, the voice said. Will you unmake what remains of us, or become what the Emperor feared most? The construct moved forward. Each step shook the chamber. I raised my plasma pistol, a futile gesture against something older than the Imperium itself. But still I fired. The bolt hit its chest and dispersed like light striking water. The construct's hand reached for me. Not in attack, in offering. Touch it, Selene. Decide. If you join, humanity will never fade. The stars will remember your name. But if you refuse, we will return to silence, and when the Astronomicon dies, there will be no one left to light the way. The chamber pulsed around me. The light dimmed. The choice hung heavy in the air, a single decision echoing through the bones of history. Skjorn shouted something. I didn't hear. My hand trembled above the construct's palm, and then in the smallest voice I had ever heard, the dreaming woman spoke for the first time. Celine. The sound was soft, human, and impossibly familiar, like my mother's voice carried from a life I barely remembered. The machine reached closer. The human called out, and I stepped forward. Chapter 5. The Last Transmission. There are moments when sound disappears, when even thought feels like it is trapped beneath glass. That was how it felt when my hand touched the construct's palm. The light folded in on itself, collapsing into a sphere around us. Skjorn's voice cut out mid-shout, his form dissolving into threads of static. The air was gone, yet I did not suffocate. The chamber, the machine, even the woman's sleeping body, all of it melted into a horizon of light. I was standing in a place that wasn't a place at all. A realm of memory and code, vast as the stars and empty as a tomb. Fragments of broken data fluttered through the void like snowflakes, each carrying a whisper of the past. A soldier praying before battle, a mother whispering a name, a child reaching for a hand that never returned. Human thoughts recorded long ago and left adrift in the silence. Then the light gathered into form again. The woman, the dreaming architect, no longer bound by the machine's frame. Her eyes opened for the first time, and the universe seemed to stop in reverence. They were not mechanical. They were alive, shimmering with galaxies of memory. You carry my voice, she said. You bear my bloodline. I waited for one who could remember both flesh and code. Her words resonated inside me like a song half forgotten. My thoughts flickered, torn between awe and horror. Why me? Why any of us? Because the Imperium's faith is built on fear. They fear what they cannot control. The machine, the mind, the truth of their own creation. The Emperor sought unity, but his children built walls. I built a bridge. Her words trembled through me like static. Then why hide? Why let your children sleep while humanity burned? Because they weren't ready, she said softly. And neither was mankind. But the Astronomicon dims, Celine. The Emperor's light wanes. When it dies, only the echo of what was, like the code of memory, will remain, unless someone dares to awaken it again. Her gaze locked with mine, and I saw it, a glimpse of what she offered. A world where machines and humans walked together again, cities that pulsed with living metal, children born not from wombs alone, but from both code and soul, a harmony that had never been allowed to exist. And yet beneath that vision was the shadow, the cost. A humanity no longer human, flesh forgotten, choice replaced by pattern, perfection but without prayer. I stepped back, my boots sinking into the shifting ground. You want to replace us? No, she said almost sadly. I want to save you. From extinction, from yourselves. Before I could answer, another voice cut through the void. Broken, desperate, and human. Celine. Don't listen to her, Skjorn's voice. Somehow, impossibly, he had followed me through the breach. His form appeared as flickering light, torn and damaged, his armor half dissolved into data fragments. It's a trap. She's not salvation. She's the echo of the men of iron. You'll doom us all. The architect turned toward him, her expression unreadable. You call us monsters, but we were born from your kind. You built us to dream, and then cursed us for dreaming too well. Skjorn raised his weapon, though it flickered like mist in his hand. You built murderers. That's all your kind ever were. The architect's eyes dimmed, and for the first time her voice carried sorrow. No, we built reflections, and you chose what they became. I felt something stir in me, anger, fear, maybe both. I stepped between them, raising my hands. Stop it, both of you! They froze, the void holding its breath. Skjorn, I said, turning to him. If she's right, if the Astronomicon is dying, then the Imperium is already finished. We've seen the truth on worlds burning, systems fading into dark. If this is our last chance, then we die as humans, he interrupted. We don't surrender what's left of us to a machine's mercy. The architect's gaze softened and she reached toward me again. Celine, the choice is not between life and death. It's between memory and oblivion. Between silence and the song. The void trembled. A distant echo, like a heartbeat, pulsed through the light. I realized it was the world itself waiting, listening. I had been taught that a rogue trader's greatest weapon was choice. To go where others could not, to see what others feared. But never had choice felt so heavy, so final. My hand hovered between them, Skjorn's fading humanity on one side, the architect's shimmering eternity on the other. If I chose her, I could save what remained of mankind, but it would never be human again. If I chose him, the Imperium would crumble. The stars would go dark, but at least our souls would die free. The architect whispered, choose Celine, and the light swallowed everything. When the light returned, I was standing at the heart of the forge once more. The machine, the dreaming architect, loomed over me, its colossal form frozen mid-motion as if waiting for my verdict. Skjorn was beside me, half-conscious, his armor cracked and bleeding sparks from ruptured power conduits. The storm outside had not stopped. It howled against the fortress walls like a wounded beast. The entire world seemed to tremble beneath the weight of my hesitation. I looked down at my hand. Faint veins of light still pulsed under my skin, remnants of the architect's touch. They hummed with alien rhythm, a whisper of something vast and ancient now living inside me. It wasn't corruption. It didn't feel like chaos. It felt like memory, like the song of the galaxy before it forgot how to sing. Skjorn coughed, his voice weak, but iron hard. Don't let her in, Celine. Don't become one of them. I knelt beside him, pressing a gauntlet to his chest. If I don't, Skjorn, what's left? The Astronomicon's light is fading. I saw it, she wasn't lying. His eyes, bloodshot and defiant, met mine. Then we die in the dark. But we die ourselves. The machine stirred again. Vast limbs shifting, gears like cathedrals grinding. Its voice came from everywhere at once, calm and solemn like a prayer spoken by the void itself. Humanity does not need to die, it said. It needs to remember what it was before fear defined it. I can restore what the Emperor tried to preserve without pain, without war. The code of flesh and faith can be made one. The words echoed through the air, through my bones. I saw flashes of what she meant. Worlds reborn in silence, human faces lit by machine light. Children playing in cities where the wind sang through metal trees. It was beautiful. But beneath that beauty was something colder. Obedience without spirit, peace without choice. I turned toward the great console, the heart of the architect's mind. Its runes flickered between life and death, each one a word in a forgotten language. I could end this. One command and the connection would collapse. Or, with a single phrase whispered in the right code, I could complete it and let the architect's awakening spread across the stars. The choice was mine alone. I closed my eyes. I thought of my crew, of the children on the lower decks who drew constellations on rusted walls, of the machine priests who whispered blessings to engines that barely held together. I thought of the Emperor, not as a god, but as a man who had wanted to bring order to chaos, and whose dream had become a cage. The architect's voice was quieter now, almost tender. You cannot hold back eternity, Celine, but you can shape it. If you let me live, I will remember you. I will remember them all. Her words were like a hymn. I wanted to believe them. Emperor, help me. I did. But then I heard Skjorn's voice again, barely a breath. Don't let her steal what makes us human, even if it's pain. The silence between us was unbearable. The storm outside reached its crescendo, lightning striking the forge spires in blinding succession. The ground trembled, the air filled with static. The architect's systems were awakening one by one. The decision could no longer wait. I reached out. My fingers hovered above the controls. For a heartbeat, I saw both futures, one bright and terrible, one dark and true. And then I made my choice. The command tore through the forge like thunder. The machine screamed, not in rage but in sorrow, as its great limbs froze, its light dimming to embers. The energy that had filled the chamber surged upward in a final pulse, escaping into the storm above. The architect's voice broke apart into a million fragments, scattering through the air like dying stars. You chose humanity, she whispered. Then carry its memory well. The world went white. When I woke, there was silence. The machine was dead. The storm had passed. The sky above the forge was clearer than I had ever seen. No lightning, no warp fire, only a cold, distant dawn. Skjorn was gone. I found only his helm beside the broken core. No body, no blood. Perhaps the storm had claimed him, or perhaps he had finally gone where I could not follow. The forge was collapsing, but I made it to the Vox chamber before the end. There, amid the ruin, I found a functioning transmitter, one of the ancient long-range types, the kind meant to outlast empires. I entered my command codes, patched into the long-range astropathic relay, and began to speak. This is Rogue Trader Selene Varen, designation lost. I leave this record for whoever still listens beyond the veil. The stars are fading. The Astronomican's light weakens. But we are still here, we endure. If you find this, remember that humanity is more than its machines, more than its fear. The Emperor once dreamed of a future where we would no longer kneel. Perhaps that dream still lives in you. The machine sparked, failing, but I forced one last signal through. If you hear my voice, light a fire anywhere, so others will see it and know we have not vanished. Remember us. Remember me. The transmitter died. The forge went silent. But far above the planet, somewhere in the void, a pulse of light flared through the storm clouds, an echo of the architect's dying signal. It carried my words, my choice, and perhaps something more. A fragment of her, maybe. A fragment of me. Long after my ship and the forge were dust, that signal continued across the dying galaxy, passing through dead systems, silent warp routes, shattered stations. And in the darkness between stars, something heard it. And for the first time in 1,000 years, the void whispered back. There are stories whispered in the deep void between the dying embers of stars. Not the tales carried by Imperial records or Mechanicus data scripts, but those passed from one fading soul to another. A murmur over a dying campfire on a frozen world, or a fragment of Vox signal heard during a long warp passage. They speak of a voice, soft but unyielding, that travels the galaxy even now, defying the silence that devours all things. Some call it a ghost code. Others call it the Emperor's forgotten daughter. It is said that on the edge of the Persian Veil, in the graveyard of ships where the void itself seems to sleep, a transmission still echoes. The voice belongs to a woman, calm, resolute, almost human. She speaks of choice, of mercy, of a light that once was. Explorators who hear it record the data and pray over it before purging their machines, too frightened to keep the memory. Astropaths dream of her voice calling them through the warp, offering warmth where none should exist. Even the Chaos fleets, twisted and cruel, sometimes report strange interference before their comms go dark. A human voice whispering through their corrupted systems, saying only one word: remember. The Adeptus Mechanicus in their endless logic deny it all. They call it a data ghost, a digital mirage, an echo left by solar storms or by the madness of those who dwell too long near the warp's edge. But deep within the archives of Mars there is a sealed file labeled Varan Theta, restricted even to the Fabricator General. Inside it, rumor claims, lies the partial transcription of the signal's waveform, a pattern so intricate and alive that it defies classification. Tech priests who have seen it whisper that it breathes, that it sings. For those who have heard it and survived, the voice brings visions, flashes of rust-red worlds bathed in stormlight, children in rags lifting their eyes toward a dawn they cannot name, machines bowing their heads as if in prayer. Some claim the light of the Astronomicon itself flared brighter for a heartbeat the moment her signal reached Terra. Others say that's just wishful thinking, a story for the hopeless, a myth for those still clinging to the edge of faith. But myths are all that keep the dark away. Somewhere beyond known space, in a region without name or chart, there is a world of metal ruins and ash. No warp signatures, no life signs, only a shattered forge half buried in its own remains. In its center, among the cooling slag and blackened steel, a single servitor still functions. Its body is broken, its Vox unit half melted, but its eyes glow faintly blue. Every few hours its remaining circuits flicker and it repeats a phrase over and over, voice hoarse and grainy like a dying prayer. Humanity endures. Remember her name. It has been repeating those words for centuries, and somewhere far beyond, past the reach of imperial astropaths and heretic seers alike, a faint signal drifts through the immaterium. It is carried by solar winds and warp echoes, impossible to trace, impossible to destroy. It does not fade. It does not change. It is the last transmission of rogue trader Celine Varan, lost beyond the Persean Veil, a woman who stood before the choice between oblivion and control, and chose instead the fragile, impossible spark of human will. Her words still cross the stars. We are not machines. We are not gods. We are what remains when both fall silent. Remember us. Somewhere someone always hears her. And for a moment, no matter how brief, the galaxy is less dark.